Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is. Welcome to this channel. This channel, we're going to be discussing people's immigration stories to the US and the experiences that I've heard from other people and some of my own. And hopefully, it helps people who are planning to travel to the US have an idea of what it is like to settle in. Now, these stories are very diverse. There's good, the bad, the ugly, and because it's the U.S., no one's story is the same, similar to other people's. They might seem like they're similar, but everyone has their own unique experience, and that is the whole point of this. To try and just give you an idea of what immigrating to the U.S. is like. Now, attached to the stories I'll be telling you will be lessons that we'll be drawing from those stories, and I'll be putting them at the very end of the stories, towards the end of the video, in order to, at least help you understand better how it is to move here. Now, this video is not only for people who are planning to come here. There's some people also here in the US who've been here for some time. They don't have their papers right. Maybe they're struggling through stuff. And perhaps by going through these videos, you're going to be able to find some little bit of information that's going to help you in your experience and in your journey to becoming a permanent resident and hopefully a citizen. So I've been planning to do this YouTube channel for a minute, and I always procrastinated. YouTube, it takes a lot of motivation to get to it. And I was making this video in a car, but the feedback from the vehicle engine was just too much, so I decided to pass on it. And I decided to find somewhere quiet to do it. Now, I won't be sharing any names of the individuals, just for privacy purposes. And but the story, it doesn't really matter the names, because the stories, that's what matters, and the lessons in them. Now, for today, the story I'm going to be telling you about is one gentleman. I guess he's from Nigeria. I guess I can tell you that he's from Nigeria. And when he moved to the US first, he moved to California. Now, for the people who don't have the knowledge of America's geography, California is in the far west of the country, like where all the tech companies are, where all the movies are set. That's where Hollywood is. It's a very nice state, but it is expensive to live there in terms of rent and gas, transportation, things like that. I guess the food is a bit cheaper than that. So he moved to Cali, and then when he was there, he found a job there. He was working there. He had settled in, had a room in a house where he was sharing with other people. And he got a call from one of his friends in Georgia. Now, I reside in Georgia. That's where I'm based. And he moved to Georgia. Now, typically when the US, you will get a lot of those calls from your friends. They'll be saying, hey, I've got a better opportunity on my end. You should come to this side. It's very common. Anyone who you speak to will tell you the same thing. There's always someone calling you from another state telling you that they're doing much better there. Well, sometimes it is true they are doing much better and there's opportunity for you. It's not always the case. And if you're not a legal immigrant in the US, I'd advocate for the bird in hand. If you have something good going on, stay there. If maybe you're struggling, then I'd advocate for moving to another place to try, and try your luck in the other state. But if things are working out where you are, I'd advocate for you to stay there until you get your papers right. So he moved to Georgia. But the good thing when he moved to Georgia is he had a job waiting for him. And he also had a place to stay. Now, the house that he got with a roommate with another lady, also from Nigeria. And I mean, it was a bit pricey because it was in a really nice apartment complex, and that I would say was the first mistake he made, because if you're coming to a place where you're just starting off, I will advocate for to get into a lease that is sometimes 1 year to 1.5 years, 1 year 3 months, around that range, because it locks you down. And if you want to move, it's difficult for you to move because it goes on your record and it goes on your renter's history. That's how it operates here. You have a credit history, you have a renter's history, and anytime they run your name and your birthday when you're looking for a house, it's going to bring out your rental history. When you put in your social security number, which you get after you have a work permit or a green card, then you have a credit history. But your rental history is just as important as your credit history. So if you're moving here, I'll advocate for you to get just a room until you settle down, maybe stay a few months. If you're doing good, then you can move out. If you're going to struggle, then just stay there until you get everything right. So he got a roommate, and they moved into this apartment complex, and that's when the trouble started. Because this lady, although the original agreement was for them to split the bills, she wanted him to pay for almost everything. She will pay her share of the rent, yes, but other bills like the electricity, internet, and all such things, she wanted him to pay for it. Now, the problem was that he was not at the house all the time. I mean, most of the time he was actually out of the house. He was mostly there during the weekends. And so they began to have little squabbles. But now, because they already locked in the lease, he couldn't move out. Now, after a few months, it got too much, and he decided to move out, and he swapped his place, I believe, with another person who decided will take the room in order not to ruin his rental history. But in the end, I believe the lease was still broken, but the two people were left, the lady and the other person who took his place, and his rental history was affected, and he had to pay back some money that was owed to the leasing office. So that would be, I would say, was his first mistake. But the good thing is he had a job ready. Now, when he moved for California, he had sold his car in California before moving here. Now, in the US, it's important for you to have a car, unless you live in a city like maybe New York or I guess Washington or Baltimore, where there's very good public transport, especially with the trains. I'll say it's almost exclusive in almost all other major places that you're going to stay, that you're going to need your own personal car. Without a personal car, you cannot survive the US. You cannot Uber everywhere, and the buses, they're not reliable in many of these places because they are far apart, and they only take the major roads. So if you're living off a major road, it means you have to get off the stage and you have to walk or get an Uber, and it's very expensive to Uber. It's simply not sustainable. So when it comes to the US, one thing I'll say is, even if you're getting a cheap car, just get one. And it's very easy to get a cheap car in the US. You can get a car for as little as $1,000 because you don't need to drive far, you just need to drive around where you are. Get around until you're ready to be able to get a better car. So he had sold his car, so he moved here. He had to wait a few months before he got another car, which he did. He got a decent car. He's a very, very enterprising person. He was able to figure out something. Then one of the people who was helping him settle in told him that he was going to introduce him to a girl who's going to help him out with his immigration status. So they went, met the girl. It was a Black American girl. And for the people who live in the US, you understand why there's a rift between Black Americans and Africans. It's I would say it's an attitude problem, and it might be difficult for other people to understand what I mean, but the people who live in the US and the people who immigrate here will understand what I say when they come across the experiences that you have with them. So this girl, she had zero motivation. She didn't work. She wanted to stay at home, smoke a little, drink a little. She was very laissez-faire about life. And I would say that was his second mistake, because when you're marrying someone and the person is supposed to help you with the immigration status, it is paramount for the person to have a job. The reason I say that is the person is your sponsor according to US law. And so if the person cannot sponsor you with their own money, then you have to get a co-sponsor or your application won't go through. So they decided to go to get a co-sponsor. They got a co-sponsor. There's a minimum amount of money that you have to get. It's called the poverty guidelines, stipulated by the US government. I believe for two people it's about 25,000 last time I checked, or 21,000, I'm not sure. That's the minimum that you have to make per year in order for you to sponsor someone. So they got a co-sponsor who was able to help them for the paperwork and send it in. But that still was a problem because, like I said, the girl was not motivated to do anything at all. And pre-COVID, things used to move very fast. So typically when you put in your paperwork, you get a response from the USCIS within about a month. And then after about 3 to 4 months, you get your work permit. After that, you go for your interview. Then you get your green card. Maybe within the span of a year, that would be your temporary green card, your 2-year green card. Unless you've been married for longer than that, then you can get the 10-year green card directly. And so he got his work permit and everything was good. He was able to get his social security number. He was settling in just fine. And then he got called for the interview. So when they go to the interview, this girl was clueless, absolutely clueless. She couldn't say out his name. And the people who know, Nigerian names can be a bit complicated. And she could not say out his name. She could not remember his birthday. She could not remember his family members, because it's every day, babe this, babe that. So it was an issue during the interview process. So when they left the interview, they were told that the officers said that they'll get back to them. But when they got back to them, they were calling them for a second interview. They gave them a date about, it was maybe a month later or 2 months later. And will you believe it? Within that time, this girl had been arrested and she was in prison for aggravated assault. Now, the problem was because it was a repeat offense and she still had something pending on her file. Her bail was set so high, they could not make it. And so she had to stay in jail for the whole process before her hearing. Now, the gentleman had to call the USCIS and tell him he can't make it for the second interview because of the circumstances. The USCIS responded by sending them a letter for a third interview. And still, by then, the lady was still in prison because they still not made the bail. Now, that becomes a problem because at that point, the USCIS can cancel your immigration status and your application, which is what happened in this case. They did cancel the gentleman's immigration status and his process application. So the guy talks to a few people and he gets advised. He finds a lawyer and the lawyer advises him to file for VAWA. Now, VAWA is a Violence Against Women's Act. It was signed by Bill Clinton in 1994, I believe. Now, even though it is primarily for women, it also has stipulation for immigrants. Now, under the one for immigrants, it covers men, it covers children, it also covers the parents of children who are above 21 years old. So even if you're a parent and your child is 21 years and above and is a US citizen or a permanent resident and is abusing you, you're liable to file for VAWA. So I'm saying these stories are going to be very interesting. And see, this is information that not a lot of people have, because even I didn't know that for a long time. That I didn't know that parents and even men could file for VAWA. I just believe it was for women only, abused women, battered women who are immigrants. But no, men can file for VAWA as long as they're immigrant. Children under the age of 21 can file for VAWA by themselves or with a guardian. And if you're a parent who's immigrated to the US, you're an illegal immigrant, and you have a child keeping you in the house above the age of 21 who's a US citizen and the child is abusing you, you can also file for VAWA. And the good thing about VAWA, it is free. You can file by yourself. You can find a lawyer to help you file. Of course, you'll have to pay the lawyer fees, but the application itself is free. So that is what the gentleman did, and the lawyer filed for him. Now, another thing that I will commend him is finding a good lawyer, because in this country you'll find people who say they're lawyers or they claim to know the law, the immigration law, and you'll pay them and they will screw you over. Some of them will run away with money. And in one of the stories which I'll tell you of a lady who that happened to her. She paid someone to help her file for her papers, and the person just disappeared. And we'll tell her, oh, there are delays at the immigration office, there's delays at USCIS, but he had not filed. He went away with thousands of dollars, which happens a lot. It's not a secluded story. That so when if you're gonna find a lawyer, find a lawyer who has an office. It is better to pay $4,000 for a good lawyer than get someone who's telling you, oh, I'll only charge you $1,500, and then they end up screwing you up. Because once you become a legal permanent resident, you can make that money very easily. Oh, it's very easy to make money in the US. It's instantaneous. All you have to find is the right opportunities, and the money will be flowing. So I'll advocate for paying for a good lawyer, a great lawyer, than skimping on the fees, getting a third of the price or the cost, and then having to do the process all over again. So as we speak right now, the VAWA application for the gentleman is still in process, and I'm guessing with the lawyer that he got, he most likely will have it passed, because this is a lady who has a criminal history of violence. And so I won't put it past the USCIS to grant the application, because, I mean, if your wife is in prison, you can't even make bail, then by all intents and purposes, you are suffering. And we hope that it does come through. If there's an update in the story, I'll update it in a later video when I'm doing someone else's story. But yes, that is a gentleman's story. Now, I'm going to try to be keeping my stories short, so that it's not too much for people to listen to. But like I said, at the end of the videos, there'll be lessons that we'll cover. And I guess for this video, the lessons are, when you're moving to the US or moving from one place to another within the US, it's important for you to get enough information from people, not just a few people. Get it from a lot of people. Let them know what our state is like, what the expenses are like. Get the advice on what you're going to do and all that. Don't just listen to the positives and then run there. And if something is, sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Now, when you move to the US or move to another state, like I said, start small. You can get a room. Rooms are cheap, maybe like $700, $600. Get a small car for a few months, and when everything is right, then you can get yourself whatever you want. There's no need to bumble. There's no need to do the big boy, big girl thing. You can start small and build yourself up. Problem is, people come here, want to start all big, post photos and show that we've made it. Doesn't really help. And if you're going to file your papers with someone, make sure that person has a job that is meeting the salary is meeting the minimum poverty guidelines. And those ones you can find on the internet. You can find on the US government websites. I believe it's the Department of Labor Statistics, something like that. So because you don't want to have the stress of having to find co-sponsors. And I'll get more stories and upload them, and I'll slowly figure out this YouTube thing. Don't worry, there'll be some excitement in my voice the more I continue to do this. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you. Goodbye.